The wind howled like a pack of wolves as Zachariah Fletcher rode through the worst blizzard to hit the Montana Territory in nearly a decade, his horse struggling through snowdrifts that reached past its knees, when he spotted what looked like a dark bundle lying motionless against an outcropping of rocks 20 yards off the trail. His first instinct told him to keep riding. The storm was getting worse by the minute, and he was already 2 hours late getting back to his ranch outside of Helena. But something about that dark shape bothered him, nagging at his conscience like a splinter under skin. He pulled his scarf tighter around his face and urged his gelding, Dakota, toward the rocks. As he drew closer, his heart sank. It was a person, a woman from the looks of the clothing, lying face down in the snow. He dismounted quickly, his boots sinking deep into the powder, and knelt beside her. She was a large woman, considerably larger than most he had known, and she was shivering violently despite being barely conscious. "Madam," he called out, having to shout over the wind. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with cold. They were a striking shade of green, he noticed, even in her deteriorated state. She looked at him with an expression that was neither grateful nor hopeful, just tired beyond measure. "Why bother?" she whispered, her lips blue with cold. "Just leave me. Let the snow take me." Zachariah felt something twist in his chest at those words. He had heard men say similar things during the war, soldiers who had seen too much death and lost too much hope. But hearing it from this woman, out here in the middle of nowhere during a blizzard, struck him differently. "Because you matter," he said firmly, already working to get his coat off to wrap around her. "Now stop talking nonsense and help me get you on my horse." She stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. "You do not understand. I am too heavy. Your horse cannot carry us both." "Save yourself." "Dakota has carried deer carcasses heavier than any person," Zachariah lied smoothly, though he was not entirely certain it was a lie. "And I have been in worse situations than this. Now, are you going to help me, or am I going to have to drag you?" Something flickered in her eyes, maybe the smallest spark of fight returning. She nodded weakly, and together they managed to get her into a sitting position. It took considerable effort and several minutes of struggle, but eventually Zachariah got her onto Dakota's back, then mounted behind her, keeping her steady with one arm while managing the reins with the other. The ride back took twice as long as it should have. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, and Zachariah had to keep talking to her, asking her questions to keep her awake. "What is your name?" he asked, his lips close to her ear so she could hear him over the wind. "Naomi," she murmured. "Naomi Crawford." "Well, Miss Crawford, I am Zachariah Fletcher, and you are going to be just fine. Where were you headed before the storm caught you?" "Helena," she said, her words slurring slightly. "Was supposed to meet my cousin. New start. She runs a boarding house there, Mrs. Patterson's place." Zachariah asked, knowing there was only one boarding house in Helena run by a woman. "Yes," Naomi confirmed. "Do you know it?" "I do. Small world. We will get you there once this storm passes and you are well enough." She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought she might have passed out again, but then she spoke, her voice small and broken. "Why did you stop? Most people would have ridden past." Zachariah considered his answer carefully. "Because leaving someone to die in the snow is not the kind of man I am. And because every life has value, Miss Crawford, including yours." He felt her body shake, and he realized she was crying, silent tears that froze on her cheeks almost as soon as they fell. He tightened his grip on her, both to keep her warm and to let her know she was not alone. By the time they reached his ranch, both of them were half frozen. The house was dark and cold, the fire having gone out hours ago, but it was shelter from the killing wind. Zachariah managed to get Naomi inside and settled onto his bed, the only one in the small two-room cabin, while he tended to Dakota, rubbing the horse down and making sure he had food and water in the barn. When he returned to the house, he worked quickly to build up the fire, getting a blaze going that would warm the place. Then he turned his attention to Naomi. She was still shivering, her clothing soaked through with snow. He knew he needed to get her into dry clothes, but propriety made him hesitate. "Miss Crawford," he said gently, "I need to get you out of these wet things. I am going to step outside while you change. I will leave some of my clothes here. They will be too big, but they are dry and warm." She nodded weakly, but when he started to leave, she called out, "I cannot do it myself. Too cold. Fingers will not work." Zachariah closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was a gentleman, had been raised by a mother who taught him to respect women, but he was also practical. If he left her in wet clothes, she would die of exposure. "All right," he said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I will help you, but I will be as respectful as possible." He moved to the bed and helped her sit up, working the buttons of her heavy coat with fingers that were nearly as numb as hers. Layer by layer, he removed her wet clothing, keeping his eyes averted as much as possible, and replaced them with his own long underwear and a thick flannel shirt. When she was finally dressed in dry clothes, he wrapped her in every blanket he owned and positioned her close to the fire. Only then did he change his own clothes, standing in the corner with his back to her. When he was done, he made them both coffee, strong and black, sweetened with a little honey since he had no sugar. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the wind howl outside and the fire crackle in the hearth. Naomi held the tin cup between her hands, absorbing its warmth, and slowly, color began to return to her face. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice stronger now. "You saved my life." "You already thanked me," Zachariah replied, settling into the chair across from her. "No, I did not." "I told you not to bother, remember?" He smiled slightly. "Well, I am glad I did not listen." She looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time. He was a handsome man, she realized, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends and brown eyes that held both kindness and a deep sadness. His face was weathered from years of outdoor work, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, or at least used to. "Why do you live out here alone?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. Zachariah was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. "My wife died 3 years ago," he finally said. "Childbirth, the baby too. After that, I just wanted to be away from people for a while. That while has turned into 3 years. "I am so sorry," Naomi said softly, and she meant it. She understood loss, understood the desire to hide from the world. "What about you?" he asked, clearly wanting to change the subject. "You said you were coming to Helena for a new start. What were you leaving behind?" Naomi hesitated, then decided that a man who had saved her life and seen her at her most vulnerable deserved the truth. "I was living in St. Louis with my parents. My father died last year and my mother remarried. Her new husband made it clear I was not welcome. I was too much of a burden," he said. "Too expensive to feed, taking up space that could be rented to boarders. My cousin wrote and said she could use help at the boarding house, so I sold what few things I had and bought passage on the stagecoach." "The stagecoach left you?" Zachariah asked, his voice sharp with anger. "No," Naomi said quickly. "Well, yes, but not intentionally. We stopped so the passengers could stretch their legs, and I wandered off to find some privacy. When I came back, they were gone. I tried to follow the tracks, but the snow started falling harder and I got turned around. I walked for hours before I could not walk anymore." Zachariah shook his head in disbelief. They should have noticed you were missing. I am easy to forget, Naomi said quietly, looking down at her hands. That is not true, Zachariah said firmly. They were careless and thoughtless. That is on them, not you. Naomi felt tears prick at her eyes again. She was not used to kindness, especially not from men, especially not from men who looked like Zachariah Fletcher. In her experience, people like him either ignored her or mocked her. They did not risk their lives to save her or tell her she mattered. The storm continued through the night and into the next day. Zachariah gave Naomi his bed while he made himself comfortable on the floor near the fire, despite her protests. He cooked simple meals of beans and bacon, and they talked to pass the time. She learned that he had been a soldier in the war, fighting for the Union, and that he had come west afterward with his young bride, Sarah, full of dreams of building a ranch and raising a family. Those dreams had died with her, and he had been merely existing ever since, going through the motions of life without really living. He learned that Naomi was 24 years old, 2 years younger than himself, and that she loved to read more than anything. She had a quick wit and a sharp mind, though years of being told she was worthless had taught her to hide both. She had been heavy since childhood, and the world had never let her forget it or forgive her for it. On the third day, the storm finally broke, leaving behind a world of pristine white silence. Zachariah ventured outside to check on the animals and dig out paths to the barn and the necessary. When he came back in, stamping snow from his boots, he found Naomi attempting to cook breakfast. "You should be resting," he said, though he was secretly pleased to see her up and moving. "I have been resting for 3 days," she replied. "It is time I earned my keep." "You are a guest, not a servant," Zachariah protested, but she waved him off. "I am a woman who does not like being useless." "Let me help." They ate together, a simple meal of eggs from his chickens and the last of his bread, and afterward Zachariah saddled Dakota. "The road should be passable now," he said. "I will take you into Helena to your cousin's place." Naomi nodded, but he noticed she looked less than enthusiastic about the prospect. "Of course, you have been more than generous with your hospitality." Something in her tone made him pause. "Unless you would rather wait another day. The cold might be too much so soon after your ordeal." She looked at him with those green eyes, and he saw hope flicker there. "If you are certain I am not imposing." "You are not," he assured her, and he realized he meant it. For the first time in 3 years, his house did not feel empty. One more day turned into 3, then a week. Naomi proved herself useful around the ranch, cooking meals that were far better than anything Zachariah had managed on his own, mending his clothes, and even helping him tend to the animals. She had a gentle way with the horses, and they responded to her with trust. Zachariah found himself watching her when he thought she was not looking. She moved through his space with a quiet grace that belied her size, and he discovered that her smiles, rare as they were, lit up her entire face. He caught himself trying to make her laugh, treasuring the sound when he succeeded. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Naomi reading aloud from one of his few books while he mended a bridle, she stopped mid-sentence. "What is wrong?" he asked, looking up. "I should go to Helena," she said, closing the book. "Tomorrow. I have imposed on your kindness long enough." "You have not been imposing," Zachariah said, setting aside the bridle. "I have enjoyed your company." "Zachariah," she said, and hearing his name from her lips made something warm unfurl in his chest. "You saved my life, and you have been nothing but kind to me, but we both know I cannot stay here forever. People will talk. It is not proper." "I do not care what people say," he replied, surprised by the vehemence in his own voice. "Well, I do," she said quietly. "I will not have anyone speak ill of you because of me. He stood up and crossed to where she sat, kneeling down so they were at eye level. "Naomi, I want you to stay. Not out of obligation or charity, but because I want you here. I have been alone for 3 years, and I thought that was what I wanted, but you have shown me I was wrong. This house has felt like a home again since you have been here." She looked at him with wonder and disbelief warring in her expression. "You cannot mean that." "I do mean it," he said firmly. "Stay, please. People will assume things," she warned. "Then we will give them something to assume," he said, taking her hands in his. "Marry me, Naomi." She stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. Zachariah, you barely know me. We have known each other for just over a week. I know you are kind and funny and smart. I know you make the best biscuits I have ever tasted, and that you hum when you think no one is listening. I know that you are strong to have survived what you have survived, and that you deserve someone who sees your worth. I want to be that person, Naomi, if you will let me." Tears were streaming down her face now. "Why? Why would you want to marry someone like me?" "What do you mean, someone like you?" "You know what I mean," she said, pulling her hands away and gesturing to herself. "Look at me, Zachariah. I am not the kind of woman men marry, especially not men like you." He felt anger rise in him, not at her but at everyone who had ever made her feel this way. "You are exactly the kind of woman I want to marry, the only kind. I am not asking you because I pity you or because I need someone to cook and clean. I am asking because when I think about my future, I want you in it. Because you make me laugh and you make me think and you make me want to be a better man. Because I care about you, Naomi, more than I thought I could care about anyone again." She searched his face, looking for any sign of deception or mockery, and found none. "I care about you too," she whispered. "But I am afraid. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up one day and regret this?" "That will not happen," he promised. "I am not a man who makes promises lightly, Naomi. If you say yes, I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you are valued and loved." "Loved?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes," he said simply. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you told me to leave you in the snow, and I realized I could not, would not, ever do that, and I have been falling more ever since." She closed her eyes and more tears fell. When she opened them again, they were filled with something he had never seen there before: hope. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and for the first time since Sarah died, he felt complete. They were married a week later by the preacher in Helena, with Naomi's cousin Margaret and her husband Robert as witnesses. Margaret had been initially shocked when Naomi and Zachariah arrived together at the boarding house, but after hearing the story and seeing the way Zachariah looked at her cousin, she gave them her blessing. The wedding was simple, held in the small church on a cold February afternoon in 1883. Naomi wore a dress that Margaret helped her sew, a simple blue calico that brought out her eyes. Zachariah wore his best suit, the one he had not worn since Sarah's funeral, and if he felt any guilt about that, it faded when he saw Naomi walking toward him. She was beautiful, he realized. He did not know why he had not seen it before, or maybe he had been seeing it all along and had been too afraid to acknowledge it. But as she stood beside him, her hand trembling in his, promising to love and honor him for the rest of her life, he knew he was the luckiest man alive. After the ceremony, they had a small meal at the boarding house, and then Zachariah took his bride home, to the ranch that was now theirs together. That first night as husband and wife was tentative and sweet. Naomi was nervous, having never been with a man before, and Zachariah was gentle, taking his time, showing her with touches and kisses that he meant every word he had said. He loved her, all of her, and he spent the night proving it. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Naomi began to cry. "Did I hurt you?" Zachariah asked, immediately concerned. "No," she said, laughing through her tears. "No, you were perfect. I am crying because I am happy. I did not know I could feel this happy." He kissed her forehead and pulled her closer. "Get used to it, Mrs. Fletcher. I intend to make you this happy every day for the rest of our lives." The first months of their marriage were a revelation for both of them. Zachariah had forgotten what it was like to have a partner, someone to share the burdens and joys of daily life. Naomi bloomed under his love and attention, her smiles coming more freely, her laughter ringing out across the ranch. They worked side by side during the day, building up the ranch that Zachariah had let languish. They bought more cattle, repaired fences, and planted a garden that Naomi tended with care. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's presence. Not everyone in Helena was kind about their marriage. There were whispers and pointed looks when they came to town together, comments about how Zachariah had settled for less or jokes about how much it must cost to feed his wife. The first time someone made such a comment in front of him, Zachariah had to be physically restrained by Naomi to keep from hitting the man. "He is not worth it," she told him quietly as they walked away, though he could see the hurt in her eyes. "He is worth breaking my knuckles over for speaking about you that way," Zachariah countered, still furious. "What he thinks does not matter," Naomi said, taking his hand. "What you think matters. What I think matters. The rest is just noise." But he could tell it bothered her more than she let on. That night, he found her sitting on the porch, staring out at the darkening sky. "Talk to me," he said, sitting beside her. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Marrying me, you could have had anyone, Zachariah. Someone pretty and thin who people would not whisper about." He took her face in his hands, making her look at him. "Listen to me, Naomi. I do not want anyone else. I want you. I chose you, and I would choose you again every single day. Those people in town who whisper and judge, they do not know you. They do not know how smart you are, how kind, how strong. They do not know that you make me laugh, or that you are the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I fall asleep. They do not know that you are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I thank God every day that I was on that trail during that blizzard. I love you," she whispered, fresh tears falling. "I love you too," he said, kissing her softly. "More than I ever thought I could love anyone. Please, do not let their small-mindedness make you doubt that." She nodded, leaning into him, and they sat together as the stars came out, finding strength in each other. As spring turned to summer and summer to fall, their love deepened. Zachariah learned all of Naomi's quirks and habits, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, how she liked her coffee with more milk than coffee, and the fact that she was terrified of spiders but fearless in the face of much larger dangers. Naomi learned that Zachariah talked to the horses as if they were people, that he had a sweet tooth he tried to hide, and that he sometimes woke in the night from dreams of the war and needed to be held until the memories faded. They had their arguments, as all couples do. Naomi thought Zachariah took too many risks, pushing himself too hard during roundup or riding out in bad weather. Zachariah thought Naomi did not take enough time for herself, always working, always doing something for him or the ranch. But they learned to talk through their disagreements, to compromise and listen, and their marriage grew stronger for it. In the winter of their first year together, Naomi discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified to tell Zachariah, knowing what had happened to his first wife, but when she finally worked up the courage, his reaction was not what she expected. He went pale, and for a moment she thought he might faint. Then he sat down heavily in a chair and put his head in his hands. "Zachariah," she said, kneeling in front of him. "Talk to me." "I am scared," he admitted, his voice rough. "I cannot lose you, Naomi. I cannot go through that again." "You will not lose me," she promised, taking his hands. "I am strong, Zachariah, stronger than I look. And we will get the best doctor, take every precaution. But this baby is coming whether we are afraid or not, so we might as well choose to be happy about it." He looked at her then, and slowly, a smile broke across his face. "We are going to have a baby." "We are going to have a baby," she confirmed, and then she was in his arms, both of them laughing and crying at once. The pregnancy was not easy. Naomi was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep anything down. Zachariah hovered over her constantly, bringing her water and crackers, rubbing her back, reading to her when she felt too ill to do anything but lie in bed. As she grew larger, moving became difficult, and he helped her with tasks that had once been simple. True to his word, he brought the doctor out from Helena multiple times to check on her, paying whatever was asked without complaint. The doctor, an older man named Dr. Harrison who had seen his share of difficult births, assured them that Naomi was healthy and the baby was strong. "Your wife is built for this," Dr. Harrison told Zachariah during one visit. "She is strong and healthy. Nature knows what it is doing." Still, Zachariah worried. As Naomi's time drew near, he became almost obsessive, checking on her constantly, refusing to leave the ranch for more than an hour at a time. She found it both endearing and exasperating. "I am not made of glass," she told him one evening in late August as he helped her into bed for the third time that day. "I know," he said, tucking the blankets around her, "but humor me, please. I need to do this." She softened, seeing the fear in his eyes. "I am not Sarah, Zachariah. What happened to her will not happen to me." "You cannot know that," he said quietly. "No," she agreed. "But I believe it. And I need you to believe it too, because I need you to be strong for me when the time comes, not paralyzed by fear." He nodded, swallowing hard. "You are right. I am sorry. I will try to do better." "I know you will," she said, pulling him down for a kiss. "Now, come to bed and hold me. That is the best medicine I can think of." On a warm afternoon in early September, Naomi's water broke while she was in the garden. Zachariah, who had been in the barn, heard her call and came running. One look at her face told him everything he needed to know. "I will get the doctor," he said, helping her into the house. "There is no time," Naomi said, gripping his hand as a contraction hit. "The baby is coming now." Zachariah felt panic rise in his throat, but he pushed it down. Naomi needed him to be strong, and strong he would be. He had helped birth calves and foals dozens of times. How different could it be? Very different, he discovered over the next several hours. Naomi labored through the afternoon and into the evening, and Zachariah stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead and trying not to show his terror. She was in pain, terrible pain, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "I cannot do this," she sobbed during a particularly hard contraction. "Yes, you can," he told her firmly. "You are the strongest person I know, Naomi. You can do anything." "I am scared," she admitted. "I know," he said, kissing her hand. "I am scared too. But we will get through this together, just like we get through everything." As the sun set and the room grew dark, lit only by lamplight, Naomi gave one final push and their son entered the world, tiny and red-faced and screaming at the top of his lungs. Zachariah caught him, tears streaming down his face, and wrapped him in a clean blanket before placing him in Naomi's arms. "A boy," she whispered, exhausted but radiant. "We have a son." "You did it," Zachariah said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You did it, and you are both perfect." They named him Samuel, after Zachariah's father, and from the moment he arrived, he transformed their lives completely. The ranch that had once been a place of work and solitude became a home filled with laughter and noise. Samuel was a happy baby, quick to smile and curious about everything. Zachariah was a devoted father, getting up with Samuel in the night so Naomi could sleep, walking the floor with him when he was fussy, and singing him silly songs that made Naomi laugh. Watching him with their son, Naomi fell even more deeply in love with her husband. The people in Helena slowly began to warm to them, or at least most of them did. It was hard to maintain cruelty in the face of a young family so obviously devoted to each other. Margaret became a frequent visitor, delighted to be an aunt, and she and Naomi grew close. When Samuel was 6 months old, they took him to town for the first time for supplies. They were in the general store when they encountered Mrs. Hamilton, one of the women who had been particularly vocal in her disapproval of their marriage. "Well," Mrs. Hamilton said, looking at Samuel in Naomi's arms, "he is a fine-looking baby. Takes after his father, I see." It was a backhanded compliment, implying that it was good Samuel did not take after Naomi, but before Zachariah could say anything, Naomi smiled sweetly. "He has my eyes," she said calmly, "and my disposition, thankfully. Zachariah can be quite grumpy in the mornings." Mrs. Hamilton blinked, clearly not expecting such a response, and Zachariah had to hide his smile. "Indeed," Mrs. Hamilton said stiffly and moved on. Once she was out of earshot, Zachariah burst into laughter. "That was perfect." "I have learned something in our time together," Naomi said, adjusting Samuel in her arms. "The best response to small-minded people is to refuse to let them make you feel small." Life on the ranch settled into a pleasant rhythm. Samuel grew from a baby into a toddler, running around on chubby legs and getting into everything. Zachariah expanded their herd, and the ranch began to turn a real profit. Naomi started a small business selling eggs and butter in town. Using the money to buy books and small luxuries they did not strictly need, but that made life more pleasant. On their second anniversary, Zachariah surprised Naomi by taking her into Helena for dinner at the hotel restaurant. It was the first time they had gone anywhere alone since Samuel was born, and Naomi was nervous about leaving him with Margaret. "He will be fine," Zachariah assured her as they rode into town in their wagon. "And you deserve a night to be more than just a mother and a rancher's wife." The dinner was lovely, and Naomi felt almost like a different person, dressed in her best dress with her hair done up, sitting across from her handsome husband in a room full of people. She noticed the looks they got, some curious, some disapproving, but she held her head high. After dinner, as they walked back to where they had left the wagon, they passed an alley where 2 men were attacking a third. Without thinking, Zachariah moved to intervene, but Naomi grabbed his arm. "Do not," she said. "It is not worth the risk." "I cannot just walk past," Zachariah said, torn. "Then we will get the sheriff," Naomi said practically. "But I will not let you get hurt playing hero. Think of Samuel. Think of me." He looked at her, then back at the alley, and nodded. They found the sheriff and reported what they had seen, and he went to investigate. Later, they learned that the man had been saved and the attackers arrested. "You were right," Zachariah told Naomi as they drove home under a sky full of stars. "There are smarter ways to help than rushing in." "I just need you safe," she said, leaning against him. "You and Samuel are my whole world. I cannot risk losing either of you." "You will not," he promised. "I am not going anywhere." When Samuel was 2, Naomi became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and when their daughter, Emma, was born on a spring morning in 1886, it was with much less drama. Dr. Harrison made it in time for this birth, and he confirmed what Zachariah already knew, that Naomi was as strong as they came. Emma was different from Samuel from the start. Where he had been easy and happy, she was fussy and particular, but Zachariah adored her all the same. He called her his princess and carried her everywhere, much to Naomi's amusement. "You are going to spoil her," Naomi warned, but she could not quite hide her smile. "That is my right as her father," Zachariah replied, bouncing Emma gently as she fussed in his arms. With 2 children, the ranch became even busier. Naomi sometimes felt overwhelmed, trying to balance caring for a baby and an energetic toddler with all the work that needed to be done. But Zachariah was an equal partner, never complaining about changing diapers or soothing crying babies. One particularly difficult day, when both children were sick and Naomi was exhausted to the point of tears, she found herself thinking about that day in the blizzard, when she had told Zachariah to leave her. "What are you thinking about?" Zachariah asked, finding her standing in the kitchen, staring out the window while Emma nursed and Samuel napped. "The day you found me," she said quietly. "I told you not to bother and you said I mattered. I think about that sometimes, about how my whole life would be different if you had listened to me." "I would have been different too," Zachariah said, coming to stand beside her. "I would have gone home to an empty house and an empty life, never knowing what I was missing." "You saved me as much as I saved you, Naomi." She looked at him, love shining in her eyes. "Do you really believe that?" "I know it," he said, kissing her temple. "You gave me a reason to live again, to hope again. You gave me a family and a future. I am the one who should be grateful." "I am grateful," she said. "Every day, I wake up grateful that you are stubborn and that you do not listen when people tell you to give up." He laughed at that, and even Emma seemed to smile around her nursing. The years passed, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Samuel started helping his father around the ranch as soon as he was old enough, showing a natural aptitude for working with animals. Emma was more interested in books and learning, sitting with her mother for hours as Naomi taught her to read and write. When Samuel was 8 and Emma was 6, Naomi became pregnant again. She was 32 now, and the pregnancy was harder than the previous 2 had been. She was tired all the time and her back ached constantly. Zachariah worried, but Dr. Harrison assured them that everything was normal, just more difficult because she was older and busier. Their 3rd child, another son they named Joseph, was born in the winter of 1891. He was a big baby and the birth was difficult, but both mother and son came through it healthy. Zachariah, holding his newest son while watching his other 2 children peer at their baby brother with fascination, felt his heart might burst from happiness. "Our family is complete," Naomi said from the bed, exhausted but smiling. "Perfect and complete," Zachariah agreed. Life with 3 children was chaotic and loud and wonderful. The ranch thrived under Zachariah's management, becoming one of the most successful in the region. They had to hire help during busy seasons, and Zachariah made sure to pay fair wages and treat his workers with respect. Remembering his own hard times, Naomi had long since stopped caring about the opinions of the townspeople who had once looked down on her. She had a family who loved her, a home of her own, and work that mattered. She was respected in Helena now, known for her kindness and her no-nonsense approach to life. One summer evening when Samuel was 12, Emma was 10, and Joseph was 4, the family sat on the porch after supper, watching the sunset. Samuel was whittling a piece of wood, Emma was reading aloud from a book of poetry, and Joseph was playing with a toy horse Zachariah had carved for him. Naomi was mending a shirt, and Zachariah was simply watching all of them, his family, and feeling content. "Papa," Emma said, looking up from her book, "how did you and Mama meet?" Zachariah and Naomi exchanged a glance, and she nodded slightly, giving him permission to tell the story. "Well," Zachariah said, pulling Emma onto his lap even though she was getting too big for it. "It was during the worst blizzard Montana had seen in years. I was riding home when I saw your mother lying in the snow. Was she hurt?" Joseph asked, abandoning his toy to climb onto Zachariah's other knee. "She was very cold and very sick," Zachariah said, "and when I tried to help her, she told me not to bother." "Why?" Samuel asked, setting aside his whittling. Naomi answered this time, "Because I had given up. I thought I was not worth saving." "That is silly," Emma said with the certainty of a child. "Everyone is worth saving." "I did not believe that then," Naomi said gently. "But your father convinced me otherwise. He told me I mattered and he saved my life. And then he gave me a life worth living." "That is so romantic," Emma sighed, and Naomi and Zachariah both laughed. "What happened then?" Joseph demanded, not interested in romance. "Then I took her home and we got to know each other, and I realized I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her," Zachariah said simply. "So I asked her to marry me, and luckily, she said yes." "Of course she said yes," Samuel said with the confidence of youth. "You are the best papa in the world, and she is the best mama," Emma added loyally. Zachariah and Naomi looked at each other over the heads of their children, and in that look was a whole conversation, a whole history, a whole lifetime of love. As the children grew older, they each began to find their own paths. Samuel, as expected, took to ranching like a duck to water, learning everything Zachariah could teach him and showing signs of surpassing his father's skill. Emma discovered a love of teaching and began helping younger children in town with their lessons, dreaming of one day opening a proper school. Joseph, still young, seemed to have inherited his mother's business sense and his father's way with animals. Naomi's cousin Margaret passed away when Emma was 14, and Naomi inherited the boarding house in Helena. Rather than run it herself, she hired a manager and used the income to fund Emma's dream of attending teachers' college in the East. It was a hard decision, sending their daughter so far away, but they knew it was what she needed. The day they put Emma on the train, Naomi cried despite her best efforts not to. "She will be back," Zachariah assured her, holding her as the train pulled away with their daughter waving from the window. "I know," Naomi said, "but she will be different when she comes back, grown up." "She is already grown up," Zachariah said. "We did well with her, Naomi, with all of them." And it was true. Their children were good people, kind and hardworking and thoughtful. They were the best parts of both Naomi and Zachariah, and they would go on to do good things in the world. When Samuel was 21, he fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sweet girl named Alice who was not afraid of hard work and who loved Samuel with all her heart. They were married in the same church where Zachariah and Naomi had wed nearly 2 decades earlier, and Naomi cried happy tears as her son promised to love and cherish his bride. "I remember when he was just a baby," she whispered to Zachariah during the ceremony. "I remember when we were the ones standing up there," Zachariah whispered back. "Seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." Samuel and Alice built a house on the far side of the ranch, and Samuel took over more and more of the daily operations, allowing Zachariah to slow down a bit. He was in his 50s now, and the years of hard work had taken their toll on his body. Though his spirit remained young, Emma came home from college with a degree and immediately opened a school in Helena, just as she had dreamed. She had several suitors, but she was in no hurry to marry, wanting to establish herself first. Zachariah was secretly pleased that his daughter was so independent, even if it gave Naomi worry. "She will find someone when she is ready," Zachariah assured his wife. She is like you, strong and sure of what she wants." Joseph, now in his early 20s, surprised everyone by announcing he wanted to study veterinary medicine. It meant going away to school, but Zachariah and Naomi encouraged him, proud that their son wanted to help animals in a professional capacity. As their children built their own lives, Zachariah and Naomi found themselves with more time for each other again. They took long rides together, just the two of them, exploring the land they had worked so hard to build a life on. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. One evening, as they watched the sunset, Naomi said, "Do you ever think about that day in the blizzard?" "All the time," Zachariah admitted. "It was the best decision I ever made, stopping to help you." "I was so sure I was going to die," Naomi said quietly. "I had accepted it. And then you came along and refused to accept it." "Because you mattered," Zachariah said, echoing the words he had spoken all those years ago. "You matter more than you will ever know, Naomi. You are the best part of my life, the thing I am most proud of." "Our children are what we should be most proud of," Naomi protested. "Our children are wonderful, but they exist because you said yes to me, because you chose to live and to build this life with me. Everything good in my life stems from that moment when I found you in the snow." Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable in the way that only comes from decades of love. "I chose to live because you convinced me I was worth saving. And then you spent every day since proving it. I love you, Zachariah Fletcher." "I love you too, Naomi Fletcher," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "More than words can say." When Zachariah was 61 and Naomi was 59, their first grandchild was born. Samuel and Alice's son, named Zachariah after his grandfather, was a beautiful, healthy baby, and holding him, Zachariah felt the circle of life complete itself. "Your great-great-grandfather would have loved to meet you," he told the baby, thinking of his own father who had passed years ago. "But I am here, and I am going to tell you all the stories." Naomi watched her husband with their grandson and felt tears prick her eyes. He was older now, his hair more gray than brown, his face more lined, but to her, he was still the man who had saved her life and then given her a reason to live it. Emma married eventually, a lawyer from Helena who appreciated her intelligence and supported her work. They had 2 daughters who were as smart and determined as their mother. Joseph finished his studies and returned to Montana, opening a practice that served ranchers throughout the region. He married a fellow veterinarian and they worked together, a true partnership. As the years passed, Zachariah and Naomi grew old together, their lives intertwined so completely that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. They faced the challenges of age together, the aches and pains, the slowing down, the loss of friends and contemporaries. But they faced it all hand in hand, just as they had faced everything else. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 16 grandchildren now, ranging from infants to teenagers, and the house was filled with noise and laughter and love. After dinner, Samuel stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who showed all of us what love really means. Who built a life and a family from nothing but determination and devotion. Thank you for everything you have given us." Everyone raised their glasses, and Zachariah and Naomi looked around the room at the faces of their children and grandchildren, at the family they had created, and felt nothing but gratitude. That night, after everyone had gone to bed or headed home, Zachariah and Naomi sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. 40 years, Naomi marveled. "It seems impossible." "Best 40 years of my life," Zachariah said, "though I have to admit I am tired. Are you tired? Exhausted, Naomi admitted, but the good kind of tired, the kind that comes from a life well lived. We did well, did we not? Zachariah asked. With our life, with our children, we did better than well, Naomi said. We did wonderfully. I never imagined that day in the snow that my life could turn out like this, that I could be this happy. I am glad I was stubborn, Zachariah said with a smile. I am glad too, Naomi agreed, though you are still stubborn. And you still make the best biscuits in Montana, he countered. They laughed together, the easy laughter of two people who knew each other completely and loved each other anyway, or perhaps because of it. When Zachariah was 65, he had a heart attack while working in the barn. Samuel found him and got him into the house, and Dr. Harrison's successor, a young doctor named Miller, was called. He survived, but it was a warning that their time was not infinite. You need to slow down, Naomi told him firmly as he recovered. Let Samuel handle more. You have done enough, Zachariah. It is time to rest. He wanted to argue, but looking at her face, seeing the fear and love there, he nodded. All right. For you. He did slow down after that, spending more time in the house, helping Naomi with small tasks, playing with his grandchildren when they visited. He found he did not mind it as much as he thought he would. He had worked hard his whole life. Perhaps it was time to simply enjoy the fruits of that labor. They were sitting on the porch one summer evening, watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, when Naomi said, I have been thinking. About what? Zachariah asked, holding her hand. About how different my life would have been if you had not found me. I would have died in that snow, alone and believing I did not matter. Instead, I got 42 years of love and family and purpose. I got to be a wife and a mother and a grandmother. I got to matter. You always mattered, Zachariah said gently. I just helped you see it. You did more than that, Naomi insisted. You loved me when I could not love myself. You saw value in me when the world told me I had none. You gave me everything, Zachariah. You gave me just as much, he said. You gave me a reason to live again after Sarah died. You gave me a family and a home. You gave me love when I thought I would never feel it again. We saved each other, Naomi. That is what we did. She squeezed his hand, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had worked together for so many years. Naomi passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 73 years old, with Zachariah beside her. He woke in the morning to find her gone, and though he knew it was coming eventually, the pain was still sharp and deep. She had been his partner for 48 years, and the world felt empty without her. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched. Former students of Emma's who remembered Mrs. Fletcher's kindness, ranchers whose animals Joseph had treated, neighbors who had been helped by her generosity. Zachariah stood at the front, his children and grandchildren surrounding him, and spoke about his wife. Naomi was the strongest person I ever knew, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not because she was perfect, but because she chose to keep going even when it was hard. She chose to believe she was worth saving, and then she spent the rest of her life proving it by saving others in her own way. She was a wonderful wife, a devoted mother, a loving grandmother and great-grandmother, and she was the love of my life. I will miss her every day for the rest of my life, but I am grateful for every moment I had with her. After the funeral, Emma stayed with her father at the ranch, worried about him being alone, but Zachariah assured her he would be fine. I am not giving up, he told her. Your mother would not want that, but I am tired, Emma, and I miss her. When my time comes, I will welcome it. Emma hugged him, understanding. Just do not go too soon, Papa. We still need you. Zachariah lived another 2 years after Naomi passed. He spent that time with his family, telling stories to his grandchildren and great-grandchildren about their grandmother, about the ranch, about the old days. He made sure his affairs were in order, that the ranch would pass smoothly to Samuel, that each of his children and grandchildren knew they were loved. One evening, sitting on the porch where he had spent so many evenings with Naomi, Zachariah felt a pain in his chest. He knew what it was, recognized it from his heart attack years ago, but this time he was not afraid. He closed his eyes and thought of Naomi, of the day he had found her in the snow, of the life they had built together. "Because you matter," he whispered into the twilight, and then he was gone. They buried him next to Naomi in the cemetery overlooking the ranch, under a headstone that read Zachariah Fletcher, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He saved lives and built a legacy. Next to it, Naomi's headstone read Naomi Fletcher, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She mattered. Their children and grandchildren gathered after the funeral, sharing memories and finding comfort in each other. Samuel, now an old man himself, stood looking out at the ranch his parents had built. "They would be proud of us," Emma said, standing beside her brother. "They were proud of us," Samuel corrected. "They told us every day we were lucky to have them." "We were," Joseph agreed, joining them. "And we will make sure their grandchildren and great-grandchildren know their story. How Papa saved Mama from that blizzard, how he told her she mattered, and how they built all of this from love and determination." The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding to the legacy that Zachariah and Naomi had begun. The story of how they met became family legend, told and retold, a reminder that every life has value, that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes choosing to see someone's worth can change not just their life, but the lives of everyone who comes after. In the town of Helena, Montana, which had grown from a rough mining town into a proper city, the Fletcher name was respected. The school that Emma had founded still stood, now named in honor of Naomi Fletcher. The veterinary practice that Joseph had started had grown into a large clinic, and many of the ranches in the area were still run by Fletcher descendants. Years turned into decades, and the world changed. The Wild West became less wild, automobiles replaced horses, and Montana became a state in its own right. But the story of Zachariah and Naomi remained, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of kindness, the importance of seeing worth in others, and the enduring nature of true love. Their great-great-grandson, named Zachariah Fletcher IV, was a teacher like Emma had been. He often told his students the story of his ancestors, how a cowboy had saved a woman from a blizzard not because he had to, but because he believed every life had value. "My great-great-grandmother thought she did not matter," he would tell his students. "She was ready to give up. But my great-great-grandfather saw her worth when she could not see it herself. He saved her life, and in doing so, he created all of this." He would gesture around, indicating not just the classroom but the whole legacy of family and love that had sprung from that one moment in the snow. "The lesson," he would continue, "is not just that you should help others, though you should. The lesson is that everyone matters even when they do not believe it themselves. Especially then. Your words and actions have power. Use them to lift people up, to show them their worth. You never know what might grow from one moment of kindness." And so the legacy lived on, not just in names and property, but in values and stories, in the way the Fletcher family treated others, in the kindness they showed to strangers, in the belief that every single person mattered. Back at the ranch, now run by the fifth generation of Fletchers, the old house still stood, updated over the years but still recognizable. In the living room hung a painting, commissioned years ago, showing a younger Zachariah and Naomi sitting on the porch, his arm around her, both of them smiling at something beyond the frame. Below it, a small plaque read, "Because you matter." It was a reminder to everyone who saw it that love was not about finding someone perfect, but about seeing the perfection in someone others might overlook. It was about choosing to stop, to help, to care, even when it was inconvenient or difficult. It was about believing in worth when the world said there was none. The land that Zachariah and Naomi had worked stretched out beyond the house, still beautiful, still productive, still home. Cattle grazed in the distance, descendants of the herd they had started so long ago. The garden, much expanded, still flourished where Naomi had planted it. The barn, rebuilt twice but in the same location, still housed horses and equipment. Everything had changed and nothing had changed. The specifics of daily life were different, but the heart of it all remained the same. Family, love, hard work, and the belief that every person, no matter who they were or what they looked like, mattered. On anniversaries of Zachariah and Naomi's deaths, the family would gather at the ranch for a reunion. They would share meals and stories, introducing new babies to old relatives, and always, someone would retell the story of the blizzard, of the rescue, of the words that changed everything. "Why bother?" they would say, speaking Naomi's words. "Why save her?" And then, speaking Zachariah's words, "Because you matter." And everyone would nod, understanding that this was not just their family story, but their family mission. To see worth, to show love, to believe that every person, every life mattered. The sun would set over the Montana hills, just as it had set on that first evening when Zachariah brought Naomi home from the blizzard, and the family would sit together, bound not just by blood, but by the values their ancestors had lived and died by. In the growing darkness, as stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky, the newest generation of Fletcher children would run and play, their laughter echoing across the land. And if you listened carefully, you might hear older voices mixed in with the young ones, the voices of all the Fletchers who had come before, of Zachariah and Naomi themselves, whispering on the wind. "You matter," the wind seemed to say. "You have always mattered. You will always matter." And in that moment, in that place, with that family gathered together, it felt like the truest thing in the world, because it was. Every person mattered, every life had value, and love, real love, could change everything. That was the legacy of Zachariah and Naomi Fletcher. Not just the ranch, not just the children and grandchildren, but the belief they had lived by and instilled in everyone they touched. That worth was inherent, that love was transformative, and that one moment of choosing to care could echo through generations. The Fletcher Ranch stood as it had for over 100 years, a testament to what could be built when two people chose to see the best in each other, to work together, to love deeply and truly. It was not perfect, no place run by humans ever could be. But it was home, it was family, and it was built on a foundation of respect and love that had weathered every storm. And somewhere, perhaps in whatever comes after this life, Zachariah and Naomi were together still, watching over the family they had created, proud of what their choice to love had built. The cowboy who had saved a woman from a blizzard and the woman who had saved him right back, together forever, their love eternal, their legacy secure. Because in the end, that is what mattered most. Not the land or the money or the success, but the love, the family, the connections that bound people together across time and space. That was the real treasure, the true legacy. And it all started with 3 simple words spoken in the midst of a blizzard, words that changed 2 lives and countless others. Because you matter. Those words echoed through time, as relevant now as they were then, a reminder that in a world that often seemed cruel and uncaring, there were still people who chose kindness, who chose to see worth, who chose love. And that choice, that simple decision to care, could change everything. The story of Zachariah and Naomi Fletcher was not just a love story, though it was certainly that. It was a story about the power of choice, about deciding that every life has value, about refusing to give up on people even when they have given up on themselves. It was about building something beautiful from nothing, about finding hope in the darkest moments, about believing in tomorrow even when today seemed impossible. It was, in short, a story about what it means to be human at our best, to see each other not as we appear on the surface but as we truly are, valuable, worthy, and capable of both giving and receiving love. And that was a story worth remembering, worth retelling, worth living by. It was the story of two people who found each other against all odds and built a life that mattered together. Their story ended, as all stories must, but their love lived on in the family they created, in the values they instilled, in the kindness they showed. It lived on in every Fletcher who chose to help a stranger, to see worth where others saw none, to believe that everyone mattered. And on quiet evenings at the ranch, when the wind blew just right and the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, you could almost hear them still, Zachariah and Naomi, laughing together on the porch, holding hands and proving every day that love, real love, never truly dies. It just transforms, becoming part of everything it touches, spreading out like ripples on water, touching lives in ways big and small, forever and always. Because that is what happens when someone chooses to believe you matter. It changes everything. And that change echoes on, long after the first words are spoken, long after the first choice is made. It becomes part of the fabric of the world, woven in so deeply that it can never be completely untangled. That was the gift Zachariah gave Naomi in that blizzard, and the gift she gave him in return. The gift of mattering, of being seen and valued and loved. And together, they gave that gift to their children, who gave it to their children, who gave it on and on, a legacy not of wealth or power, but of love and worth. And in the end, what legacy could possibly be greater than that?